And where did you grow up?
I grew up here in Los Angeles until Pearl Harbor. And then, as I think you know, Japanese Americans on the West Coast were summarily rounded up and sent into 10 barbed wire internment camps. I was 4 at the time of Pearl Harbor, and I was too young to really understand what was going on. But I still do remember that day when armed soldiers, soldiers with guns, bayonets on them, came to our home to order us out. I remember that as a very scary day. And you know, a child can sense your parents' anxieties. And we were taken from our home to a horse stable at Santa Anita Racetrack, where we were housed for a few months while the camps were being built. And when the camp was built, we were put on a train and taken all the way across the southwestern desert to the swamps of Arkansas, a camp called Rower. And I grew up there for a portion of the war. And then we were transferred from that camp to another camp in Northern California called Tule Lake, which was an even more harsh camp. There were three levels of barbed wire fence and tanks patrolling the perimeter. And after the war, we came back home to Los Angeles.
Now, why were you transferred from Camp Roar to Camp Tula Lake?
Yes, there's a dark chapter of American history in that. Immigrants coming to the United States could all aspire to someday becoming naturalized American citizens, except one group of immigrants, immigrants from Asia. And for all rights and purposes at that time, it was excluding Chinese and Japanese immigrants to the United States. They could not be naturalized. Um, when the war broke out, young Japanese American men and women rushed to their local recruitment boards to volunteer to serve in the U.S. Army. But because we looked like the enemy, and simply for that, we were rejected from service. Those that volunteered to serve were classified as 4C, which means enemy non-alien. Now that's a very peculiar term, non-alien. It means a citizen. We couldn't even be called enemy citizens. We were called enemy non-aliens, and they were rejected from service. And we were all incarcerated. But a year into internment, the government realized they had a manpower shortage, and here was all this manpower that we've incarcerated under the label of being potential spies, saboteurs, traitors. How do we tap this manpower? So they came down with what was called a loyalty questionnaire, which in its on the surface sounds outrageous. After they've taken our property, our homes, our businesses, our freedom, and incarcerated us for a year, they want to test our loyalty. It was a series of about 40 questions, and everyone in these internment camps had to respond. Everyone over 17 years of age had to respond to this, answer the questions in the loyalty questionnaire. A 17-year-old girl or a 80-year-old immigrant lady all had to respond to this questionnaire. There were two key questions that the government wanted answers to. Question 27 asked, will you bear arms to defend the United States of America? Can you imagine this question being posed to an 88-year-old immigrant lady or a 17-year-old girl? Question 28, and this was only one sentence, but it had two ideas. It asked, will you swear your loyalty to the United States of America and forswear your loyalty to the Emperor of Japan? Now, for a Japanese American, someone born and raised here, the word forswear your loyalty to the emperor was very offensive because it assumed that by birth You were ingrained with a inborn loyalty to the emperor. I mean, you can't forswear something that doesn't exist. So the government assumed that there was an existing loyalty just because we look like this. And so if you answered no, meaning I don't have a loyalty to the emperor to forswear, you were also saying no to the first part. Will you swear your loyalty to the United States? If you answered yes, meaning yes, I will be loyal, you were, fessing up that you had been loyal to the emperor, and the government uh, was justified in putting you in an internment camp. It was it turned all 10 camps into turmoil. My father, as I said, was born in Japan and ineligible for citizenship by government, decree. He said, gall, to ask me this after they've taken my property, my home, everything. I am there's they've taken everything, but there's one thing that they can't take, and that's my dignity. I am not going to grovel before this government. And he answered no to those two questions. And my mother, I mean, she's a young mother with 3 young children, 1 a baby. They expect her to go off and carry a gun and fight. No, she said, this is nonsense. I'm not going to subject myself to it. And she also answered no to those 2 key questions. And because of that, we were removed from the camp in Arkansas to the camp in Northern California. And that's why they had 3 layers of barbed wire fence. We were disloyal